Well, good morning, everyone. It is time for us to get started with our webinar today, which is focused on how to file your own trademark application. Here at Dana Legal Services, we can do that work for you. However, there are some people who prefer to do the work on their own and represent themselves with the trademark office. So this webinar is going to show you how to file a basic word mark. There are all kinds of different marks that you can file. You can file marks that are logos. You can file marks that are stylized, or you can just file a mark that is a basic word mark. So in this webinar, we're going to go through that and explain that process for you. So I'm just going to put my screen up. Oh, by the way, during the webinar, if you have questions, just put them in the chat. We'll get to them at the end. During the webinar, I'm just going to go through the steps, and then at the end, we will try to address all the questions that people have. At any time, feel free to put your questions in the chat. So I'm going to share with you my screen that shows the page that I am currently on. So hopefully right now you can see the screen that says USPTO. How I got to this page is basically uspto.gov. It's shown right here. And that stands for U.S. Patent Trademark Office. You go to the website and you come to this first page. From this first page, in order to file your trademark, you go to the Trademark tab, not this one here, but this one here, and you select TES Forms. This is the tab you need to select in order to file a trademark. Once you select that tab, you come to this page, which basically says apply online. That's the page that you're on of all these different pages. And right here, it says initial application form. So if you can see that right here, that's the one that you would select. Once you select that, it takes you to a page that says start your application. So this is trademark initial application form. And you have two different kinds you can file, the TES Plus or the TES standard. The difference between these two is the fee that you pay and your ability to provide a customized list versus a standardized list. The TES Plus fee is $250 that you pay to the trademark office, and the standard is $350. And they explain the difference between those two if you want to read the details. The main difference is that with the TA Plus, everything is done electronically through the internet, whereas the standard, you can mail stuff in and do some customized things. For the most part, most people are fine just using the TAS Plus. So we click Start Your Application, and it takes you to this page, which basically allows you to, I got to sign in. Sorry, I did not do that earlier. So we got to put in our password. You click I'm not a robot, and then it says we're all right. Yep. There it is, verified. I click sign in. It's going to take me to this page. Now, if you don't have an account with the trademark office, that's fine. You can just proceed without signing in. But I've signed in, so now my account information is here. And that's important at the end when I go to pay the filing fees. So here's the two different applications that were mentioned. You can select either one. We're going to use the TAS Plus and go from there. In the event you are filing for yourself and not represented by attorney, you would say, no, I am not represented by an attorney. And they give you this notice, to basically, understand what you're doing. There's nothing to do on this section. This is to upload a previously saved form. So if you started something and you have an account and you saved it, you can pick it up from here. Otherwise, you pick the TAS Plus, you say, I'm not represented by an attorney, and you hit continue. When you come here, you need to list the owner of the mark. Now, the owner of the mark can be you as an individual, or it can be a company name. In this instance, I'm just going to basically say XYZ company. And you're going to have to identify what type of entity it is. If it's you as an individual, you just mark that. If you have a corporation, limited liability partnership, you just pick the one that's relevant to you. I'm going to assume that this one is actually a corporation. XYZ company is a corporation. By the way, this needs to be the correct legal spelling of the company name. So if you have things like INC period and things like that at the end of your company name, you need to include that. You select the state where your company is incorporated. So for this purpose, we'll just put California. If you happen to be outside of the US, then you can certainly pick that jurisdiction that you are in. The internal address, if you have some kind of a suite number or PO box number or something, you can use that there. But the mailing address here, we're going to put 1111 out of Southwest Highway, just to make up an address. You put the city in, and we're going to put good city. You put the state, California, and we'll go from there. And of course, the United States and the zip code, you can do 94444. I'm just making up a zip code. Of course, you need to have the correct information in here. If the address of the company is different from the domicile address, so let's say the company's address is somewhere in France, however, they do have a US office, you would uncheck this and you would write the company address in here. Otherwise, for this purpose, because the company is located in the US and we have a US address, we're going to use that. You will need to enter a phone number. So I'm going to enter my phone number here for the purposes of simplicity. If you have a fax number, you can put it in. And then if you have an email address, you can put it in. You can just put in me at, I'm just going to make it up again, hotmail.com. Or for my purposes, I can always put Jubin at Dana Legal Services. So for this purpose, we're going to put me at hotmail.com. And if you have a website that's associated with your business, you can certainly enter that in here. You basically put www. And we'll just put in Dana Legal Services as the website. And we click continue. So this page is basically the information of the owner, the person that's going to own, or the entity that's going to own the mark. And we click continue. We go to the next page, and this is where you put in the mark. Now, remember, we are doing standard characters. There's also the option to do logos and fonts, or you can do sound marks. If you're going to do a sound mark, I highly recommend you get an attorney involved. These are very complicated things to do. But a standard mark, you can just say whatever your mark happens to be, you can put that in here. So you can say my business, and there it is right there. You can have it in all caps. You can have it in lower caps. You can present it however you want. The thing that's important here, though, is to make sure that this is correctly spelled. It has to absolutely be correct. Otherwise, you will have to refile your application and pay the fee again. If you cannot change this after you have filed it. So whatever you've got listed here, that's the mark they're going to examine. So at this point, you click continue. There's no additional statements to provide. If you do need to provide it, you'd have to know why. And there's an explanation here. But for your case, for the most part, there's nothing that you would need to do. So you don't need to check it. If you do check it, here's what happens. It expands the form to provide the additional statements. And those are the kinds of things that you would need to provide. But in our case, we don't need to provide additional statements. So we're not going to do anything here. And by the way, anything that's marked with a red star is a required field to fill in. We have no additional statements, so we're going to remove that. So it's basically my logo, my trademark is going to be my business. Now, this could also be a service mark, but that's for the next phase. All right, once you get to this page, you now need to assign the types of goods and services. So you click this, and again, this is customized. This is not customizable. I'm sorry. This is not customizable. You need to pick from the list they have. So let's pretend like you are selling shoes. So you can put in shoes here, and it will bring up all the different categories that have shoes. The important thing to note here is the class. These are all class 25. You'll notice that sometimes the class changes because it's a different product. It's a different thing. Here it says shoes for dolls, charms for shoes. So you can see what these are the different things you can do. Let's just say that I'm just going to pick the general category shoes. Once I pick the category I want, and you can pick as many of them as you want, as long as the class is the same, the fee doesn't change. The minute you change the class, in other words, if you pick this one, which is dog shoes in class 18 and shoes in class 25, there will be two fees that you will be charged, which is basically for two classes. So pay attention to what these classes of goods are. If I pick anything else in class 25, I can pick as many of these as I want. There will be only one fee charged. And for the purposes of this, I'm going to do that. I'm going to pick these, and I'm going to now say insert the categories I picked. By the way, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see that there are 3 total pages of descriptions that you can pick. Again, some of these are class 9, class 7. So as long as you pick class 25, you're in good shape. I'm going to pick insert it, and here we are. Now they've put all these classes in, and now it wants to know whether or not I am using the mark or I plan to use it, because in either instant, you can file a mark or an application for a trademark. You can be using it or have been using it for 10 years, 5 years, 10 days, or you can say, I plan to use it, but I'm not currently using it. What's the difference between these two? If you say I'm using it, you have to provide specimens, samples of you actually using the mark, either from your web page or from pictures that you took of the product showing the brand name on it or the packaging with the brand name on it. In this case, I'm going to say that I plan to use it. I'm not actually using it. So I'm going to pick this as the basis, and it's going to basically assign that basis to all of them. So I picked section 1B. I clicked this box to say, basically, I agree with this statement. Now you can read that in your own time. For the purposes of efficiency, I'm just going to go. And now that I've checked it, I can now tell it to assign the 1B basis. And what's going to happen is this section here is going to be filled with 1B. Please note that these are all the same classes. If I had different classes, I would have to do this for each of those classes. So I assigned the filing basis, and the next page, now it says all the filing basis is 1B. If I want to change it, I can. If I want to add goods and services, I can. Otherwise, I click continue at this point, and it takes me to the next page. Since you are not represented by an attorney, it won't ask for the attorney name and all that information. It's just going to ask you for a docket or a reference number. In your case, you won't have one. Unless you have 5 or 6 trademarks you filed, you don't need that. But if you want, you can put the reference number here as something in terms of, for example, written word mark. Okay, so you know that this is the written word. You have a limited number of characters you can use, which is 12. This is typically used by attorneys when they have docket system and docketing so they can track it. But in this case, I'm just going to put written word mark, so I know that this is the written word mark. And of course, here you can pick the email address that you want. Remember, the primary email address was the one I put in, me@hotmail.com. And I can put in any other email address I want, up to 4. So I'm just going to leave that blank for now, and we'll move on. But again, remember, you can add as many email addresses, as many different email addresses as you want, up to 4. You just separate them by commas. At this point, you click continue. So because we picked one class, class 25, the fee is $250, and that's the total fee you have to pay. You can sign this document directly. You can email it for someone else to sign it, or you can print it out, hand sign it, and mail it in. For efficiency purposes, we're just going to say sign directly. You have to check all of these boxes. So this one is a box that talks about the basis, which is, whether you're filing this mark and it's your mark, it's someone else's mark. And these other boxes, if you read through them, are basically you making statements in terms of the accuracy. So basically, you have to check all these boxes, otherwise it won't move forward. For the signature, you need to start it with a /, then type in your name, and then a \. Now, please note that your name can be typed in all caps. It can be all lowercase. You can put anything you want in here as long as it's between 2 /, and it's your signature. Once you come to this box where it says date signed, it automatically inserts today's date, but you can change that if you want. It asks for your name. So I typically then put in my name. Try to make sure that this name entered here matches the name here. And then your position, of course, when an attorney files for a client, they have to state that they're an attorney of record. Otherwise, you say what your title is. So it's an individual, or you can say, CEO, you can say owner. You can pretty much say anything that relates to your position in the company. If you're an individual, you can just basically type individual in that box. As they noted down here, you can say owner, holder. Here's some examples of what you can put in. I'm just putting in owner for now. And then you put in your phone number here, which is your personal number, whatever number you want. Keep in mind that any information you put in this application becomes a public document, so that anyone else can see it, they will know it. So if you don't want your personal phone number there, use a number that you're okay with, like your company number. Also, if you don't want your personal email revealed to the world, make sure you include that there. With regards to this particular page, once you've entered this information in and checked all the boxes, you now click validate. And it will take you to this page saying that, we're ready to file your mark. All the information is there. If you want to review any of the information you've filed, you can click on any of these tabs. So, for example, input will take you to show you all the information you have inputted. Mark, it'll show you exactly how the mark is going to be typed up. So you can check the spelling before you file. And these are information in terms of the details of the form you filled out. You can check on XML file, or you can check on text form, and you can download that information and save it. Once you're at this page, you look at step 1, step 2, is just to make sure there's no errors. Here's the email. No other email was provided. You can download and save the data. Step 4 is you need to confirm that you agree by checking that box. And there are 3 statements that you need to review and confirm. And step 5 is if you're ready to file electronically, you can say pay and submit. I am not going to do that because we're not going to submit this trademark application. You can click this and save the form for later. You can come back to it. Remember at the very beginning, I noted at the bottom that there was a place where you could check saved information and bring it back up. And then you can go back and change things if you want. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. And by the way, don't click the back button. Always click the navigational button at the bottom here if you want to go back to a previous page. Otherwise, it messes up the system and the form gets messed up and you'll have to start all over. So I'm just going to go back to the very first page to show everyone where that information was that you could start from a form you've already saved. And here we are. On this page, remember, you can click this button if you had something saved up and you had an account. Otherwise, it doesn't work. You have to have an account associated with you, and we can go there. So now I can go forward by clicking continue. I'm basically going to have all the information I entered already there. I'm going to go forward. So this is all the information we already filled out, everything that we had done, it's already there. You have to revalidate. And now we're at this page. Again, we're not going to submit anything at this point. We can save this form and come back to it later. If I click save form, it'll basically just load it up and save the form for me, and I can come back. And by the way, this form is now saved on my computer. And once I go in, I can come back and use that button to extract it out of my computer. So that, in a nutshell, is how you prepare and file a basic word mark application for some mark that you plan to use, not a mark that you're actually using, because remember, we made that choice along the way. I'm going to now take a quick look at the chat to see if there's any specific questions. If you're going to do a logo, that's a different thing. How you need to upload it is you need to save it to your computer, and then you would click the right button to say add and upload the form. Or if you're actually using your mark, you have pictures of your mark, you can load it on your computer, and then you click the button that said upload the form. And from there, you would upload the sample or the specimen of the mark. Any other questions that we have, we can certainly answer right now.
Hi, Jubin. Nicole here. On the back end, we have a question from one of our other platforms, wondering how long does this process take after you've gone ahead and applied? How long does it take to be examined and whatnot?
That's a very good question. So it kind of depends on the backlog at the trademark office. Currently, it's taken them between 5 to 6 months to pick up your application and examine it. So about 5 to 6 months from the day you filed it. So assuming we filed our mark today, we would be able to, or we would expect to receive something from the trademark office where the examining attorney has looked at it and given us either an approval or a rejection.
Okay, great. And what happens, I guess the next question would be, what happens if it gets accepted right away? Is that
if it gets accepted, I'm sorry, go ahead. You said if it gets accepted right away, or?
Yeah, is that possible to get accepted right away, or if it gets rejected?
Yeah, I mean, if you've done everything right and the examining attorney at the trademark office couldn't find any conflicting marks in your goods and service space, then they will approve your mark. And what happens after that is they will publish your mark for a period of 30 days for anyone out there to oppose it. If during that 30-day period no one opposes it, then they move your mark to allowance and registration. So they allow your mark, it gets published for 30 days, and then it gets registered. And typically that 30-day period starts at a specific date, and they tell you what it is, and they tell you when it ends. However, they don't do things immediately after it ends. Sometimes it takes them 2 to 3 months to issue your registration certificate. But what happens after your mark is published and it gets through publication without any issues, your mark becomes registered and you get a registration certificate with a registration number. There's also the possibility that they would reject your mark after examining it, in which case they will send you an official written statement as to why they have issues with your mark. It could be something as simple as you didn't put the correct information in, or it could be something as difficult as there's another conflicting mark out there and they can't give you your mark in light of that mark, in which case you would have to address that. And at that point, you really need to get an attorney involved because the complexities of what you say and do have a long-term impact on your application.
Great, thank you.
What other questions do we have, Nicole?
It looks like we have another question that came in. And how long, if my trademark is accepted, then how long is the validity of that trademark?
Great question. So as long as you are using the mark, your registration is good. In order to ensure that you're using your mark, the trademark office will ask you to file a statement of use to verify that you are using your mark. Basically, what that means is that at 6.5 years, which is the initial one, and then every 10 years after that, you file a statement of use to confirm that you're still using your mark. If you don't file that statement of use, what happens is your mark gets canceled. The other thing is you have to vigilantly enforce your mark. So it's quite possible that your mark may become a common description for the goods or the services. And if that happens, then you are also at risk for losing your mark. The word escalator actually used to be a trademark, but because everyone referred to moving stairs as escalators, they eventually lost the mark because they didn't go about vigilantly enforcing it. I would say that, for example, Google it is also a description of using a search engine. I don't know what Google is doing about preventing people from doing that, but that's certainly one other example that could potentially become public domain.
Great, thank you for that. And I guess lastly, we have one last question. Is it possible to be rejected for a mark that sounds similar to another mark, but is spelt different and appears different?
The answer to that is yes, as long as the goods and services are similar or in a similar field. So for example, the word cool, many people spell it many different ways. So you could spell it C-O-O-L, the correct spelling. You could use phonetic sounds like K-O-O-L. As long as it's in a similar space, similar sounding marks can be rejected. One way to avoid that issue is to, instead of presenting a basic word mark, to present it as a logo, which is distinguishable from other people's use of the mark. The other thing you need to keep in mind is that it's possible to search these things in advance and have a professional searcher do a search and bring the results back to you or an attorney for analysis. And then you can make a decision as to what would be the best way to approach your trademark filing.
Great. That looks like that is all there is from the audience, unless you have any closing thoughts. We're good to go.
Just the only closing thought I have is that if you're planning on spending a lot of money on creating a brand, creating a logo, creating a name for your product or services, it's really important to do some searching in advance to make sure that the mark is not taken by somebody else already, that the logo you plan to use is not being used by somebody else already, whether it's in a similar field of goods and services or different. It's still good to know what you're headed into so that the description you provide is important. And finally, for all the people having, small businesses or their early stage companies or startup companies, it is really, really, really important to protect your brand, especially because it is a low cost activity as opposed to having to come back and deal with rebranding or changing your brand because somebody else goes out and uses that brand and protects it and then comes to you and says, hey, I've got this brand, you can't use it. That's it. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all the questions. We're here to help you. If you need anything, please reach out.